Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again and bringing you State of Holy Priest, Part 1 for Battle for Azeroth Alpha. Everything you need to know about the changes and some of my thoughts about the future, right? Getting into it, what's really changed with BFA? Artifacts are gone, so the traits that you already know and love have been removed, or they're baked into talents or baked into the spec itself. So keep an eye out for some of those things coming up, because again, it is still pretty early on at the time of this video of Alpha. So what we're seeing so far is the artifact traits are gone, and they're starting to start reworking some of the talent trees. We haven't yet seen the Azerite tiers and trees and things like that for the necklace, right? So we haven't seen those quite yet at the time of this video. But starting it off with the talent tree, what we've got right here for you on your screen. Not tons and tons of changes, but there are a couple of important ones. Piety and Divinity are removed. Benediction get a little bit of a nerf. Cosmic Ripple is added as a talent at level 100, and Holy Word Salvation is added at level 100 as well. Circle Healing is also moved down to 75, and the 45-60 tiers just kind of flip-flopped really quick. Now, if you're wondering what Holy Word Salvation is, it's actually a pretty incredible talent. It is a 12-minute cooldown, heals all allies within 40 yards for 150% of spell power. It's kind of like a heal effect. It's like 20-30% of people's HP, and applies Renew, and applies 2 stacks of Prayer Mending to each target it hits. That is incredible. The cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds whenever you cast Holy Word Serenity or Holy Word Sanctify. So on Alpha, I got a little in-game timer stopwatch that I set up, and I basically spammed as hard as I could just to see, just to be able to try to see how much I could reduce the cooldown of Holy Word Salvation. And I got it to about 2.5 minutes. So I think it's very likely that, a normal use of, not spamming 24/7, but having, very, very frequent Holy Word use, you're likely going to be around a 3.5 minute, maybe a 4-minute cooldown with Holy Word Salvation. So it'll actually not be that long of a cooldown, and at the moment it doesn't have any mana cost attributed to it. So it's a pretty insane effect. It's, in fact, better than a revival because the healing is a lot more spread out. So you're having, the instant effect. So you can instantly start topping people off out of a dangerous zone of health. You're having the Renew follow-up, and usually early on, especially early on in raid tiers, people are not always topped off, and you're applying Renew to them, and you're applying 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending. So these Prayer of Mending stacks bouncing all over the place, being super, super mana efficient. If we get any kind of Say Your Prayers trait or anything like that in your artifact, this talent will be absolutely mandatory because you'll want to take advantage of those extra bounces that you're going to be able to receive from that. But we'll have to see. As it stands right now, this talent is ridiculously powerful in raiding. Just by being created, it's ridiculously powerful. But some of the negatives to it, it also kind of references the entire talent tree as a whole. This is a tool that Holy Priest doesn't necessarily need, and I would argue that it doesn't really need. In fact, I could argue that this talent should be on a similar row with Divine Hymn, and maybe they would adjust Holy Word Salvation, and some of the effects and things like that. But it's more raid healing for a spec that already has a lot of tools to heal the raid, and not really much in the way of tools to heal 5-man environments, and very, very light on survivability and mobility tools, right? So the 2 top classes for Mythic Plus in Legion right now are Paladins and Resto Druids by every scope and measure, right? I personally do tons of Mythic Plus on my Priest. I've done 24s, 25s, and I'm still, working on pushing there. But there's not a lot of great tools for Holy and Disc in the way of 5-man healing environments. There's a couple here and there, but especially when we're looking at the Holy Tree, it's very, very light in that department. What do you have for extra survivability? Okay, well, you have to sacrifice your mobility in order to get it. Does Druid or Paladin have a similar conundrum there? Not really. Druid, for example, is very rich in mobility and survivability. Paladin not very high up in terms of mobility, but they are able to have very, very strong survivability because of so much baseline armor, extra HP, all kinds of little things like that. And they're able to, utilize a very diverse talent tree that they can kind of adjust to whatever they need. Having an ability like Devotion Aura that they're able to constantly have up at all times, and they're able to adjust sharing damage reduction with other targets versus standing away from other targets and keeping all the damage reduction for yourself if the damage can be focused on you. It's pretty incredible. And it adds to dynamic gameplay. With the Holy Priest talents right now, none of these talents especially add too much dynamic gameplay, except for maybe Binding Heal. Binding Heal, and then you have some opportunities for Enduring Renewal. Starting from the 15 tier, for example. Enlightenment Trail, don't really add much to gameplay. Enduring Renewal, we found from this past expansion, it adds gameplay in specific situations. When you have a fight like Desolate Host or something like that, when you have the raid group reduced or almost cut in half, then it's a little easier to maintain your renews in an efficient manner, right? The 30 tier, well, like I said, you're sacrificing mobility for survivability. And sometimes most times, it's way better to be more mobile so you can dodge the garbage on the ground rather than having to reduce your damage that you take from that garbage. The 45 tier, this is actually one of the ones I think needs a lot of attention. Light of the Naru should go the way of Piety and Divinity and just be straight out removed, because it's sitting next to Guardian Angel, which is utility, and Afterlife, which is kind of utility, kind of throughput-y, but in this situation with the talents that you're presented, you're always going to take Light of the Naru. Unless you're able to predict perfectly when you're going to need to use Spirit of Redemption, time it perfectly, and you need to have those extra seconds, which has never happened in Legion at least, you're going to take Light of the Naru. It's just a flat HPS increase, it's a flat DPS increase, and you're going to take it, right? So this also doesn't add to any compelling gameplay, and it's not a choice, you know? It's something that's just flat out better. The 60 tiers is PvP-oriented, CC-oriented. I like it. I like that we're getting Psychic Scream back for Holy Priests. That's awesome. In terms of the 75s, I love Binding Heal, and like most Holy Priests, I kind of wish that it would just be baseline. Having Circle Heal into the mix, again, gives you another raid healing tool that we already are plentiful of. We already have tons of them. Maybe it'll be a little bit more competitive in this window with Binding Heal. And then Surge, you get a little bit of mana efficiency, a little bit of mobile healing, but not too much. Again, having Benediction next to Divine Star and Halo is pretty disappointing, because Divine Star and Halo have not been competitive talents since they were introduced first in MOP, right? When they were introduced in Mist of Pandaria, great talents, awesome, take them in different situations, extremely powerful, and Warlords and Legion have just made it so that they are barely worth casting to get a decent effect out of. And that feels horrible. And I hope other people would feel this way. I would much rather see, and again, if we're balancing at, you know, this certain level, I would rather that our baseline toolkit get reduced to make these talents feel more impactful. Because putting it at a level where it's just worth casting over filler or whatever doesn't feel good at all. And Benediction, especially if you're looking at something with Holy Red Salvation, the synergy that you're able to have there by refreshing all those renews that were already applied with Salvation and keeping higher and higher uptime there, just seems like that's going to be the go-to talent again. And it's a baseline talent that doesn't impact your gameplay in a credible, in a noticeable manner. You just say, oh, I got some renews out, cool, you know? And that can be a fine talent. But when it's paired up against other talents that don't have large impact, it doesn't feel good as a healer. It doesn't feel good as a player. You know, the rework that Holy Priest undertook in Legion was fantastic, but the biggest sin, I think, not to be crazy rhetorical, but the biggest issue I have with it is that the talents are not feeling very impactful. They're not feeling like I'm making a difference in my gameplay by taking these talents. Divinity, well, I just casted Holy Words more often. Piety, I just casted Prayer of Mendings more often. Light of the Naru, cast Holy Words more often. Benediction, still casting Prayer of Mendings anyway, right? These talents were not impacting my gameplay in a credible manner, and they didn't change things up, and their competitive options in the same windows were not competitive enough for me to take otherwise if I wanted to kind of shake up my gameplay while still keeping a credible effect. And there were not specific set bonuses, and I know set bonuses are leaving, but there were not set bonuses that would make us start leaning towards one talent or leaning towards one of these other things over the course of the expansion. And that's one thing I think they should really look at, whether it's on the talent tree or it's on the artifact tree once we get our Azerite necklace traits and stuff like that. You know, how our talents impacting our gameplay and changing the gameplay for us. We've seen things like Binding Healing during Renewal be niche on specific fights, but you're not going to have, you know, your encounter designers changing up healing patterns to promote using certain talents for Holy Priest, right? It's just going to naturally happen as they, you know, try to make things different and make new content, right? It's not something that's going to be affixed with certain encounters. You shouldn't build your encounters that people will start mixing things up in their talent trees. You know, it should be built on having fun. While I'm rambling here, Cosmic Ripple and Holy Word Salvation, while they're interesting talents, and Cosmic Ripple, of course, functions just like it does today when your Holy Words come off cooldown, it emits a little bit of healing here and there. Cosmic Ripple and Holy Word Salvation kind of do similar things in different packages. A little more raid healing over a long course of time with Cosmic Ripple, very spread out. Holy Word Salvation gives you a huge burst in a specific window, and it has really good synergy with Benediction in the 90 tier. So you have two options that just increase your raid healing, and neither of them really do much to impact your healing in 5-mans. Apotheosis is the only one that really does that, again making it a default only option for that dungeon, which can be fine in talent trees, but when you're looking at some of the issues that I've had and other people I think would also have seen in taking Apotheosis, it feels kind of bad, because Apotheosis is a great cooldown, but it's very unwieldy. It has a very long cooldown in 3 minutes, and it has a very long duration in 30 seconds. So long, in fact, that often you're done using the ability, if you're using it in a raid environment, right? Everyone's topped off by the end of the 30 seconds, well before the end of the 30 seconds. Usually you're, you know, having 10 to 15 seconds of runoff, where you're not really using it, not really having any impact. In Mythic Plus, same story. I ended up just using it for damage at the very end of the duration, which can be fine, but if this is a healing-oriented talent, I should feel like it should fit to the damage patterns. It should fit and be a little bit more wieldy in that aspect. I definitely think this should be looked at. Some of the things I'd like to see is reduced cooldown, reduced duration. They honestly could take away the free mana casting. I think that would be totally fine, because a lot of times, like I said, in Mythic Plus, it's really not that impactful anyway, and if we're expecting either Cosmic Ripple or Salvation, both of those talents are free in terms of their mana cost anyway. You know, if it was 50% less of a cost or something like that, or even if they want to keep 100%, you know, I don't think it really has a substantial impact these days. One thing I will say, though, is that your ability to react more rapidly to damage is kind of problematic with Apotheosis, because it doesn't give you that immediate effect. You have to still ramp towards your Holy Words. So you may use your Holy Words, then hit Apotheosis and start ramping up to get your Holy Words back. But if Apotheosis is on the global cooldown, and then you're casting 2 or 3 more abilities in order to get your Holy Words back, there's a big gap area where you're missing out on your most powerful abilities with a cooldown that's meant to give you those abilities much quicker. So exploring something about resetting the cooldown of Apotheosis, or resetting the cooldown of your Holy Words when you utilize Apotheosis, I think should also be explored. Again, they need to do a lot of balancing in order to do that. Significant duration reduction, something with a cooldown, you know, but that's something I think they should really take a look at and explore. Of course, it is very, very early on in the alpha testing, so that's kind of why I want to start getting my wish list out. Some of the big things that I'm very interested in seeing. Let me know what you guys think, if you agree or disagree, and why. What you want to be seeing for Holy in Battle for Azeroth, and, you know, maybe some suggestions and talents and artifact traits of your own. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.